Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the latest edition of the Woke Bros. Of course, I'm your co-host, Big Waz, aka Wazi Lambre, joined as always by my brother, my partner for real, Nando Vila on the West Side. What's good, brother?
Pretty good, man. It was good to see you the other day. We had celebrated my
Yes,
birthday,
sir. Happy
had
birthday. I
some
didn't even text you
drinks.
happy birthday on Monday, but
It's all right.
happy birthday now that
Yeah.
it's Wednesday.
I wanted to save it for the show anyway. It's more important.
There you go. We did have some celebratory drinks. We had fried chicken ice cream. Uh, as always, Mish had the best organic wine in Los Angeles on tap. It was just great. Shouts to
Yeah.
everybody that pulled up. It was a true meeting of the minds, a power dinner, if you will, Nando.
Hell
And
yeah.
so on today's show, there's a lot going on in the culture about vax mandates and all of this shit. It's gotten to be a bit humorous to me, how harebrained the whole thing has become, and we want to get into some of that. The John Gruden situation, I think, speaks to our current moment in the culture when it comes to workplace standards and what becomes a fireable offense and X, Y, and Z. And I think there's a lot to sort of mull over there. But first, man, we got to talk about Dave Chappelle. I don't know if you got to watch the special, Nando.
I actually have not watched it yet.
I got a chance to watch it. Basically every single Netflix special that Dave has done. He's got a new one called The Closer out on Netflix. I think everybody should go check it out. It's got moments of just some of the sharpest humor that exists, right? Like this guy's ability to write a punchline is crazy. Space Jews is gonna kill you guys when you get to that joint. It's Dave. He's a master of his craft, as he's so you know put it in the not.
Likes to remind us. Yeah.
Yes. Like he likes to remind us exactly. But again, a lot of people from the trans community and LGBTQ adjacent communities, they felt a way about the special. Netflix's workers were talking about, oh, it's bullshit that we're empowering this guy and all of this. And look, here's what I'll say. I don't think you can make a credible argument that Dave Chappelle is putting people's lives or well-being in danger by his comedy specials. And if that's the fucking standard, you can either take it or you can leave it. I just don't, and whatever, I'm a cisgendered nigger. So who knows, right? Like maybe nobody gives a fuck about what I have to say about this, but like, I just don't get it. Like you don't have to like his shit. You can think peace into death. You can say that you expect more from Dave. That's great, but you don't have to like it. This shit exists on a streaming service for people who feel like laughing to watch. Like nobody can credibly make the argument that Dave Chappelle put people's lives in danger, right? Like this isn't like Donald Trump telling people to storm the Capitol with like cops and shit and civilians got shot and killed. Like this is a dude telling off-color jokes about trans people's genitals. I mean, yes, it's whack. Sure, some people's feelings and their feathers might get ruffled, but I think that's kind of the point that Chappelle is trying to make. Like, yo, you guys aren't above being joked on. And he's doing it from in the way that I think is clever, in the sense that he's doing it as a black person. He's like, well, because I'm black, I can make this argument, because of the oppression and X, Y, and Z. But, I think the argument he's making is that it's a ridiculous argument, and I tend to agree with him.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'll caveat by saying that I have not watched the special, but I think that Ben Burgess, friend of the show, has written a book called "Canceling Comedians While the World Burns." For some reason or another, comedy and comedians have become a huge flashpoint in the culture war, and people have turned toward policing comedians in a way that was just not done up until very recently. as again, and I think we've talked about this a lot, as a substitute for politics in an era where mass politics are essentially stamped out. People do feel powerless, and they're correct to feel that way. They are powerless. Our system has become less democratic than it was. It was never great. It was never perfect, but it's become less so than it used to be in the most important arena of all, which is economics. The great economic questions of our time have been settled. Political decisions around the economy have been largely outsourced to the Fed. So it's even to the extent that we could even get Congress to do something, they don't even touch it. Like the big issues of our time, war and peace, and the economy, are kind of outside of democratic control, which means we argue about other stuff. And for whatever reason, comedy has become the substitute for that, and policing comedians. It's a kind of flip side to, I think when Jon Stewart did his Daily Show and people were talking about it as like the greatest news program in America, like that Jon Stewart was the most important voice. He's the kind of comedian that turned comedy into they always did satire and political commentary and all that stuff, but the success of the Daily Show, which was like a huge, massive success, won bazillions of Emmys, was like a huge cultural touch point. And how many covers did you see of Jon Stewart being like, this is the most important political news voice in America, most influential, whatever, blah, blah, blah. The flip side is that then people kind of assumed that all comedians were doing important news, political stuff, whether you agree with the Jon Stewart thing or not. And so policing comedy became a substitute for the real politics of questions of, who gets what in society, war and peace, climate change, whatever. I mean, that's the reference of Ben Burgess' book, Canceling Comedians While the World Burns. Canceling a comedian over some bad joke that he or she may do achieves basically nothing for the political goals that are stated. Getting Chappelle banned from ever doing a Netflix special again or whatever will not materially benefit the lives of trans people in any way, shape, or form. I promise you that. Which is not to say, I'm not trying to say that if you're trans, you should not be offended or
that you should like
the comedy, right? Or that you should like it. I believe that the jokes might not be for you or offensive, but it's not a politics is all I'll say.
Exactly.
And that it's that
what's the ideology of anti-Chappelle stand-up comedy? What is that you shouldn't make jokes about trans people's genitals?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah.
Okay. I don't.
Yeah.
And then I mean, that's the question that I think Nando and I are essentially always trying to get at when it comes to these culture war topics or these issues that come up of representation. Because you saw, Deadline had the story about Netflix workers sort of leaking Chappelle information and saying, well, why don't we use our platform for trans comedians? I'm like, okay, and then what?
Yeah, and then what? It's a very limited political vision. I mean, again, I think that, and I haven't watched the special. If Chappelle advocated for fewer rights or anything for trans people, then it becomes a more political thing. I think that as long as you support kind of basic civil rights for all people, regardless of gender, race, creed, all that stuff. Joking about it or not, it may make, it may not be polite, or it may not be something that I would advocate that you should do at a dinner table, or something that I would advocate that you should do if you ever met a trans person, or even do it at work. It's not good form or etiquette.
Of course.
A stand-up comedy special is not like the political arena that we've made it out to be. It's just not. But it weirdly has become one. More so than other arenas. A lot of arenas in our life have become political arenas, whether it's sports. People complain about that all the time. Weirdly, music, not so much. You know what I mean? Music has not become as political as other arenas of life. Although, with one exception being, I guess, Kanye West,
Yeah, but
where
that's
people
like
don't like him.
clown politics. It's like
Totally, but
he
like when I
joking.
was reading the reviews of Donda, which I'm not a hip hop expert. Like I can't appreciate hip hop I can't make like pass a judgment other than whether like I kind of enjoy listening to it or not.
Mhm.
Like as a higher. You and I have talked about this in private a lot, but whenever I read a review, like a negative review of Donda, like I was convinced that they weren't actually reviewing the
No.
content of whether the music was good or not. It was it was tinged through the eyes of Kanye as a culture war figure. And Kanye has crossed over to the other side of the
Yeah.
dominant hegemonic culture, which is a liberal culture. Um,
Yes.
I think it's pointless to deny the reality that in the 90s or in the 80s, especially, the liberal culture was not the dominant culture, that there was, a
Right.
war, where like conservatives had much more power within the cultural
The moral majority
the
is
moral
what we
majority
called them.
within the cultural industries. Conservatives had a lot more power than they do not. That liberal ideology, in all ways, like both in social liberalism, but also kind of just weak tea liberal economic visions, have become the dominant cultural output of our time, and that the gatekeepers of culture all have basically identical views, and so they've kind of won that culture war. So when someone crosses over or when pushes against that, the actual artistic merit of that person is thrown out the window for its cultural impact. So a good example is like we were looking at the Rotten Tomatoes reviews of both the Chappelle special, but also like the Fauci documentary. And the Chappelle special had 33% on Rotten Tomatoes from the critics, and like 99% or
From the people who
97%
watched it.
from the audience reviews. Yeah. And then there's a Fauci documentary out like by Disney and National Geographic. It has like a 90% from the critics and 4% from the audience. Again,
This is where
the
we're at.
gatekeepers of culture have decided that liberalism, however you want to define it, we all kind of know it when we see it, is the dominant mode and is the lens through which to judge culture, and it's not exactly in line with the vast majority of people in the actual real world.
So there's a lot to say too behind that. Look, full disclosure, we're the people who do a show called Woke Bros. Ironically, we think it's dumb. We think it's stupid. We don't fuck with woke culture. So that's a full disclosure right now. Anybody who's listening to this, if you came with your, yo, we need to be very sensitive, it's not gonna happen here. We just don't believe in that shit. So that's a one. A couple of things though I will say about Dave in the special, because I think it's important to actually have some sort of, an artistic critique for the piece of work that he did. One, it's funny that you would mention Jon Stewart, because I think Jon Stewart would say it's ridiculous that a comedian is doing this work. But I think but at the end of the day, like, you chose that job. I think Dave has chosen to make himself a cultural critic. He's chosen to make himself somebody who has views on society that should be taken seriously. Like, Bill Burr doesn't get this backlash. It doesn't matter what he has to say about society, because he's kind of posited that, like, I don't give a fuck about none of this shit for real, right? And so that's a one. We got to say that about Dave. So I think it would be like a little bit disingenuous to pretend that Dave is just doing jokes, because he's not. And I don't think he wants people to think that he's just doing jokes. So we're going to take Dave. We're going to meet Dave where he lives. Two, I think the special on his own was trying some interesting stuff, right? Like the idea that you're taking Jews to task, that you're taking white gays to task, that, the group of people that I thought was fascinating about the special, the group of people that get it, I think the worst, that are the biggest butt of the jokes, are poor whites who nobody defends. There's nobody defending poor hayseed, trailer trash, toothless, tobacco chewing whites. Like, there is no space to defend them in culture. And Dave is just mercilessly killing them in this special. And nobody's going to take him to task for that. This is a marginalized group of people. They are poor as fuck. Nobody's going to take him to task for that. Right. And I think that's kind of the point of what he was doing when he was pissing off the trans people. Now, I do think, there's some blind spots to what he was doing. I don't think he tied the knot, so to speak, on what he attempted to do. I understood what he was attempting to do, but I don't think he fully rounds it, right? He doesn't square the circle, if you will. And that's fine. I think another critique that's out there is like, him positing his blackness versus trans people and gay people getting motherfuckers fired and shit. People have said, well, Dave he basically does an erasure of black gays, which I would say this. Black gay people are not getting the baby's festival tour dates canceled. You don't have that power. Sorry. You don't wield that type of influence. It's not y'all that's doing it, right? So I understand what people are saying, but like the bottom line is it's influential, very rich, very powerful white gays who are doing it. And I think that's what Dave was trying to get at in the special. It's like, it's just white people problems. It's white people pretending that this shit really matters. There's white people who pretend that Dave Chappelle can ruin the lives of every trans person who ever existed because it's a bunch of white people who live cushy ass, protected ass lives, that they would make a movement, that they would cancel people, that they would drag people for jokes said at a comedy special. That was my read on what he was trying to do. Now, did he execute it? I think he might have fell a little bit short, but I mean, shit, man. I love the special. I was in my crib fucking dying laughing this morning watching that shit in preparation for today. So, I think the fucking the takeaway here is like, who gives a shit, bro?
Yeah.
Like, now look, people can reach out to me and tell me why this is dangerous because I see that shit get thrown around all the time. This is inflammatory. This is dangerous. Please demonstrate to me how this is empirically dangerous what Dave Chappelle is doing for the existence of trans people. I would love to learn that to be the case and not just offensive. Run of the mill, John Gruden calling DeMaurice Smith big lips. I don't see how this is any different than that.
Yeah. So when I was saying before about the liberal culture being ascendant in the ideology around kind of liberalism, especially social liberalism, is dominant in the gatekeepers of our culture. Within comedy, there has emerged in recent years a sort of backlash to that liberal hegemonic culture. It seems to me like the best. The easiest path for a comedian to achieve kind of a little modicum of success these days is to push against that. They will immediately get invited on Joe Rogan's podcast and get a huge audience. But there is a kind of brewing, popular backlash to this kind of thing. Again, this is not to say that that kind of comedy is like good or anything like that, but it's a reality that exists. But I will say this, that there used to be in artistic circles a kind of understanding that art had to be defended, like especially transgressive art had to be defended, whether it kind of landed or not in its transgression. That if you kind of hit an artist for trying to be transgressive and not necessarily getting there or landing the triple somersault or whatever, that would create an environment for art that would stamp down on the desire to push the envelope or to try new things. That the whole idea of art is to reflect a reality, but also push the boundaries of what we find comfortable or polite or whatever, and that you could defend that without necessarily liking it or or agreeing with it or whatever. And that has kind of gone away, and it's a shame. And I think it creates a kind of a more anodyne artistic landscape in which everyone just kind of plays it safe. Everyone kind of plays it to a certain to adhere to certain standards. It's a version of what existed in the 1950s in the wake of the Red Scare, of like these kind of staid, conservative, like grassy lawn with the little tire swing. Every show was kind of the same. The bad guy always got his comeuppance. The good guy always won. The girls were always behaved. They were always, they never like had premarital sex or anything like that.
I'm glad you explained that, Nando, because I think that's what, like, we have to spell that out for people. When we say that, like, the liberals won the culture war, like, there was a time where just implying that a black dude was dating a white woman on TV or in a movie, much less they kissed or fucked, that was like, whoa, that was pushing the envelope. That was beyond the pale. That was like, oh, that was offensive in the culture, right? And the liberals have won in culture. Like, culture is now at a place where gayness, interracial, blah, 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 all of this shit is the norm. Yeah. It's the normalization of it. And now the liberals, that's the crazy shit about all of this shit, is like, the liberals used to revel in the idea of offending the status quo. And now that the liberals in culture are the status quo, the concept that they would ever be offended, they just go nuts. And then they they get hyperbolic and say what Dave Chappelle's doing is dangerous. It's literally the same language, bro. It's exactly the same language that the conservatives would use to be like, all right, my daughter's going to go fuck 3 niggers now because of this movie. It's like, bro, like, this is kind of not how this shit works, and it's just fascinating to watch it play out in real time.
Yeah. It's, again, the arguments that, like, I don't know, showing gay people on TV was going to turn your kid gay were ridiculous. You know what I mean? When Pat Robertson or whatever said it,
making it right.
And there is a tendency amongst liberals to do the flip side of that argument. And again, I think that we should just resist it, which doesn't mean that you have to watch the Chappelle special. It doesn't mean you have to like sit there with like the Clockwork Orange Ludovico technique with your eyes open, forcing it down your throat. One must recognize the reality that Chappelle is incredibly popular. And that pushing the pushing against that does have popular purchase. That's just a reality. I mean, I think that the numbers kind of bear that out.
Anyway, go watch the special, The Closer. I laughed out loud several fucking times. Please go check it out. We move on to, I want to talk about the Kyrie thing. Even though we generally we try not to talk about sports on here, but I think this thing has crossed over into the greater culture because it's related to this global pandemic. And this guy, for those of you who don't know, Kyrie Irving is let's say a mercurial point guard of the Brooklyn Nets in the National Basketball Association. The league has put in basically a vaccine mandate for all intents and purposes. And states like New York and California have made it so that like you can't go to like crowded venues and all of that shit without proof of a vaccination. Kyrie Irving has decided to take a stance that he's not going to do a vaccine. He's not going to be vaccinated just basically because he doesn't want to. He doesn't believe in it. He thinks it's mass control. All kinds of stupid shit. His arguments have no fucking merits. There's no reason in engaging with Kyrie's vax arguments. But I do think it speaks to something greater that's happening in the culture when it does come to shit like, mask mandates and vax mandates and Americans' concept of what oppression is and Big Brother and all of this shit. And I'm just like, God damn, Snowden was like 10 years ago, damn near. Like, it's over. The game is, and here's why people need to stop flattering themselves about this match control shit. Y'all don't need to be controlled. Y'all don't care. Y'all fucking docile as shit. Y'all don't give a fuck. Y'all don't stand for nothing, and they all know it. They all know we're fat, and happy. They don't need to do this shit. I'm telling you, when the Patriot Act comes out, when Snowden is like, yo, they're collecting all of our shit and using it however the fuck they want. And they can give it to whoever they want, whenever they want. They can use it. Like, let's just say you wanted to take down the government as some rogue agent. They know your whole search history. They know everything you've ever done, every drug you've ever taken. Yeah. They will discredit you in a fucking millisecond. The people shut the fuck up and didn't care and kept eating corn dogs. So this idea that people flatter themselves that the government needs to control us, they need to keep us, they need to keep us under control. You motherfuckers don't need to be controlled. You're doing just fine doing their bidding. Shut the fuck up. Anyway, it's just the Kyrie thing just speaks to a collective, like, just I don't know, so navel gazy, and like this idea that the world revolves around us, and like it's just absurd, honestly.
In a way, it's a flip side to the previous segment about Chappelle, in that the exact same analysis that I had about the Chappelle thing can be applied to the Kyrie thing. We live in an era in which democratic politics has been basically stamped out around the major questions. And therefore, whenever people feel like they can exert a certain amount of power over something, regardless of how small it is in the grand scheme of things, whether it's canceling a comedian or whether it's refusing to wear a mask or take the vaccine, they kind of take it and they kind of take some pleasure in it because they know deep down in their bones that they don't have any other power in any other scenario. And you're right that Americans are kind of a very pliant people. Some fucking idiot says that they're going to bomb an airplane by putting a bomb in his shoe or something, and therefore for the next 20 years we got to take off our shoes at the airport. And some TSA agent's gonna hand us, pat us down, even though we know that doesn't do shit to stop anything. It's been proven time and time again that it's just doesn't do shit to stop a fucking single terrorist attack, yet we fucking do it quietly and we shut the fuck up about it because we're pliant people. I think you're right. I mean, the Kyrie thing, I was reading about it, was very funny because it's just the grandstanding is so ridiculous.
He said one of his people told Shams Charania of The Athletic that he's doing it in worker solidarity. He's doing it. He's doing it in solidarity with the workers because losing your jobs for not being vaxxed is fucked up, Nando. Yeah. So Kyrie is actually a Leninist. He's actually Marxist. I've been calling him Che Guevara with a crossover. He is, he's in the mountains of Bolivia with the rebels, bro. Like, I'm telling you, man, this guy's gonna die with the shit.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it speaks to a certain uniquely American conception of rights, and that where it's like Americans only kind of can conceive of what are called negative rights, which is meaning your rights to not have something, someone else do something to you or whatever, like, or like the rights to like that I don't have to do X or Y Z thing.
Because we're lazy.
But Europeans, for example, have a more expansive view of rights, in which, for example, they believe that everyone, at least in their countries, have the right to, a free and public education, or housing, or free healthcare. Right. These are rights that they see. Americans don't see those things as rights. They see things like you can't tell me to say the thing, or you can't tell me to take the fucking vaccine, which is just, again, and I've seen some kind of like left people talking about the vaccine and skeptic about the vaccine because it's a big pharma thing or whatever. the left critique of big pharma. This is Jordan Peterson was also kind of saying this, like, where's the left on, talking about their skepticism with big pharma when it comes to the vaccine, huh? And it's like, dude, our skepticism of pharma isn't that their fucking medicines don't work.
That's
The
it.
problem,
That's
the
what I'm
critique, the
saying.
critique of pharma is that they fucking hoard the medicines and then they charge the fucking, they gouge our eyes
They're
out
price
for
gouging
shit
us.
that we need. Yeah.
That's the
But
critique.
like, I don't know,
What?
Lipitor works,
Like,
like
what the
in
fuck?
fucking, yeah.
Like, it's
Insulin
just,
works.
I'm just
Yeah.
like, yo, these people are like pretending that they've never taken painkillers. Or like, I'm like, all this shit works. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about as far as big pharma skepticism. And also, it's free. We're getting it for free. We're not paying for it. The government already made them fat. Like, it's free. If you want to have a conversation about the government giving them money, okay, sure, let's privatize medicine. I'm with that. Let's have that conversation. Let's buy the whole pharmaceutical industry as a country and fuck them off. Bye.
Let's nationalize. Let's
nationalize it. How about that? I don't have a fucking problem with that.
Yeah.
But like, what are we even talking about here? I don't know. I feel like I'm in the twilight zone with some of this. And also, I would always watch movies about the zombie apocalypse, and we're there. This is it. Like, when you're literally talking to people, like, is this a person there? Like, what? You don't want to get the Moderna? This is the zombie apocalypse. You're a zombie. You're an idiot. You're essentially a walking fucking idiot. You're no longer a sentient human being, right? You think
how's the Kyrie loss going to affect the Nets?
They're still going to be very good. They're still going to be extremely fucking good.
We don't do that kind of talk on this show.
Yeah, they're still going to be extremely good. But anyway, it's just the vaccine stuff is just, it's hilarious.
It's so funny.
I have some anti-vax people in my life, and the amount of stress they have, man, anytime a mandate comes down, or they're just like, oh, fuck, so much for land of the free, home of the brave. Somebody said
like,
that.
Dude, that's been gone for a long time. And it has nothing to do with the fucking vaccine. Yeah. Vaccines, I mean, it's been like said a million times. It's not like particularly insightful point, but like, we have vaccine mandates for a million other things. Right? Like, I remember going to school, and like, you couldn't go to school if you didn't fucking have like a bunch of vaccines for polio,
all of that shit, measles and mumps or whatever, like all of that shit. I remember taking my Vax card to school so they could photocopy it. Like, shit is not new. I don't know. We don't do a lot of Vax talk on here, but the news has been so fucking hilarious around it, where a dude in the NBA is literally like insinuated that he's willing to forego about like another $150 million in potential career earnings going forward to not get the jab. Is just the funniest, dumbest, stupidest thing I've ever seen. And then I do want to talk about John Gruden, who has stepped down as coach of the Los Angeles Raiders, which will never not be weird for me to say. I mean, not Los Angeles. Did I say Los Angeles?
Las Vegas.
Las Vegas. See, the Las Vegas Raiders emails. So, okay, to rewind, the Washington football team. They are being sued for like a hostile workplace environment or some shit like that. And email records of basically the entire management structure and organization has been collected, something like 600,000 emails or something ridiculous like that. And within the work emails correspondence, their former GM and vice president used to correspond a lot with John Gruden back when he was in his capacity as a Monday Night Football host and just ESPN sort of talking head personality type. And those emails were revealed to the Wall Street Journal to have, he said some pretty racist shit about DeMaurice Smith, who's the president of the Players Union. He said he has big lips, which is just like one of the classic ways to denigrate the physical appearance of black people. Basically say that we're ugly, say that we have big lips, although I happen to live in California and every single fucking white bitch out here has lip injections. So joke's on you, John Gruden.
I didn't know where you're going with that one.
Yeah. Joke's on you, John Gruden. And, he said that about DeMaurice Smith. He called Roger Goodell, the fucking commissioner of the NFL, the F word, which the slur for gay people, because he wasn't cracking down on guys. He said another guy should have been banned from the league. Eric Reed should have been banned from the league for protesting. He he called people a bunch of pussies. And also he texted nudes of two Redskins cheerleaders, which I guess was like the implication being like he was fucking them and they sent him the nudes and he sent it to the GM, which I think is
It's
probably
so
the most
weird.
fucked up thing in all of this.
That's the
More
worst
than
one. That is
yeah,
a fireable offense.
yeah, like bro, like these shorties gave you nudes and you're giving them to their boss. Like that's
Yeah.
kind of crazy.
That's
You know what I'm
insane.
saying? So, but yeah, and then the guy gets fired, and whatever. John Gruden, look, he's not a coal miner, right? Like, I don't think you should fire a coal miner for this. No shot. But for somebody in an institution like the NFL, where he's very much so a front-facing representative of the institution, and not just that, like it comes out that you're racist and you're a homophobe and all of that. Like, you probably can't effectively do your job as a football coach anymore after this comes out. So I don't think the emails in and of themselves warrant a firing, in my opinion. I think the way that job functions makes it so that like it's untenable that they could keep you
Yeah.
around.
No,
So I
absolutely.
understand that, but like, I'm sorry, bro. If this dude was a construction worker, no, I don't think you should get fired for calling somebody the N-word in an email with your buddies. The fact that you did it on your buddy's work email, that's ridiculous.
That and the sending of the
That's
nudes of the
fucking ridiculous.
cheerleaders to the
Yeah,
that's
that's
but
just that's absurd.
but my general stance on these kind of things is that I would always encourage people to take a deep breath and think about whether their own private correspondence would withstand public scrutiny. John
Mine
Gruden
would
got
not.
fired because they yours would not, neither would mine. I'm sure everyone in the audience wouldn't either. John Gruden got fired because they were leaked. Obviously, you have to be smart. And anything put into work emails, like, you can't do. And of course, like, you're right that like once this comes out, like, his job becomes untenable, and that's understanding. My favorite analysis came from OJ Simpson. Did you see the Juice's take on the Gruden thing?
Yeah.
He's like, well, I personally think that John Gruden, I mean, he took a very good Tony Dungy team and took him to the Super Bowl, and then
On the
ever
back
since
of a
then he's been
black
a
man.
500 coach.
Yeah. Like OJ's take was maybe John Gruden was never that good anyway.
Maybe it was
Which
that
is
good.
a fair take, honestly.
Yeah. I whenever I think of John Gruden, I just think of Mike Ryan's impression of him. Like, I tell you what, man, that quarterback's got a set of pair of balls on him like I've never seen before.
Oh boy.
No, yeah. I mean, my general position is always that, that like think about whether your private correspondence would ever sustain to public scrutiny. Obviously, the case of John Gruden, like, I don't give a shit about John Gruden. He's a fucking shithead, and he's a very rich coach, and it does affect his position, his ability to do his job, and it makes perfect sense for him to be out. Also, like, how many NFL coaches do you think are secretly like, man, Gruden, me and Gruden like are no different, and if any of my emails ever came out, like, I'd be
yeah,
fucked,
and people and I hate these type of Negroes, fancy educated Negroes. Like, well, he was doing that on a work email. You deserve to be fired. They love to pretend they're the most fucking professional people.
That's some bourgeois nonsense.
Oh, I'm the most professional person ever. When you're unprofessional, you deserve to get fired. Like, why are you always advocating for people to get fired, fam? So yeah, I think Gruden, obviously, he had to lose his job just by the nature of that job. However, like I said, bro, like, I don't think this should have gotten anybody fired. Like, a normal person. I'm sorry. I just don't see why this. I don't know. I've never felt. I get that there are trillions of black people out there who do feel a complex about, oh, they say we're dumb, we're lazy, we're not good looking, we're rudderless. I don't know. I've never personally internalized those things. So I see something like this and just think it's dumb. It's just like not
I tell you what, you black people have a pair of lips on you. You know, I've never seen anything.
Big old soup coolers.
Man.
Yeah. I don't know. I thought the Gruden thing. I'm just
Wait, so
interested to
he was
see.
banging the Washington football team cheerleaders? Gruden was?
I think that was the implication that he had banged the one or two of them, or maybe he was in, convo with them, had bagged them, and they sent them nudes, and he shared it with the fucking president
That's so fucking.
on his work email. That's crazy. He didn't text it
Yeah.
to his phone on
Yeah.
his work email. And I was listening to Bo on Lebatard today, and he made the point like, people don't remember the early internet, but there used to be these email chains
Yeah.
where
Like
people, all kinds of
chain
conspiracies,
letters.
chain
Yeah.
letters, and all that crazy
Send it to
shit.
5 friends and yeah. Blah, blah.
Right. And Gruden is of that era, so he probably comes from that culture of emailing people all kinds of crazy shit. And so, I never knew John Gruden was a crazy Uncle Liberty, but like, here we are, man. Stand for the
Not
anthem.
surprising.
He fucking thinks concussion protocol is for pussies and sissies, and
Did he ever play in the NFL? Did John Gruden ever play in the NFL?
I don't think so. He played college football. He was a quarterback in college, I believe. But he never played I don't think he played.
I love the idea of a guy that never played in the NFL being like, these, like the NFL to me, like I used to be a huge NFL fan and I've kind of faded on it, not for any particular reason, just because I don't know, I got older and busy and I don't know. I've substituted other things in my life, but I used to be like a huge NFL fan. And like, I look at the NFL now and the size and speed of these players
It's crazy.
is just fucking bananas. Like I remember, I don't know, like you're seeing guys now who are like 280, but like move like they're fucking, and I can't imagine playing one play in the NFL without like dying, like, and to see fucking little fucking John Gruden, who looks like a small guy. I don't know if he's actually that small, but like being like, oh, these concussion protocols are for pussies.
Yeah,
like, dude, one play and you would fucking die.
You would die instantly. You would die an instant death, bro. You wouldn't even see it coming. But yeah, these workplace issues continue to be made public, and it continues to be a matter of fascination. People, public figures, private correspondence coming out, and I don't know. I guess I'm supposed to care that John Gruden might be a bigot. I just don't. And whatever, people can call me whatever it is. I just don't think it's important. It's football, guys. Like that racket attracts a certain type of person. Like it's a pretty dirty fucking business. And we're all pretty dirty from enjoying it. So that's why the moral high ground shit that we go to sometimes is kind of just absurd to me in a sport where the point of the game is to bash your skull into the other guys. It's like, okay, sure. Anyway, that's our show for today. Make sure you become a Patreon at patreon.com/count the dings. Of course, check out all the other Count the Dings offerings. We'll see you guys next week. We're out of here. Peace out.
Later.